You're listening to the Night Demon Network. Go to nightdemon.net/subscriber to unlock more exclusive content.
Hello and welcome to the Night Demon Heavy Metal Podcast. I'm your host Nesbit, and 2025 marks a big milestone for Night Demon. 10 years since their first studio album, Curse of the Damned, was released. So you might have heard about the reissue, the Ultimate Edition of the album. Well, we're going to deep dive into Curse of the Damned, the story behind it, how it stands up 10 years later. I talked to the members of Night Demon as well as some people close to the band, and I even reached out to past member Dusty Squires for his take. Can't wait to dive into Curse of the Damned. I'll also mention if you can take 5 seconds and give us a rating or review on whatever platform you listen on, that would be awesome. So let's get into it. This is Curse at 10.
Curse of the Damned, after 10 years. Wow. I think that album aged really well. I think it's a fan favorite. I think it's it's probably most people's first, real introduction to the band. I mean, I don't know how much the EP really got out there with people, but this album being released, on a good label and all that, probably, got to a lot more people than the EP. So, that being said, it being like the first thing that, a lot of people heard, it's a big one. It still is to this day. A lot of those songs, just every time that we play them, I feel like they're just like, the pinnacle songs from the catalog.
Man, has it been 10 years since Curse of the Damned came out already? I did not play on it, but I do remember when it came out, and hearing those songs still does bring back a lot of memories from that time in my life when they were new. Like I said, the album is always a snapshot into where the band is at the time, and it's very much almost like a time capsule to listen to a record. And that's why when I say I listen back to it, and it brings me back to some memories I have of, when I saw Night Demon back in 2015, or, when I first heard the album, where I was in my life. That's why a lot of bands' first album or two tends to be the most fondly remembered, because it is a snapshot into when the band was young and the listeners discovered them when they were young, and it gives you all these great memories. That's the great thing about music. It can bring you back to a certain time period, a certain experience. It's a very powerful, strong thing, and for Curse of the Damned, it definitely shows a place and a time for the people who are on the record, and I think that it's a very, very enjoyable record to listen to all these years later, because you feel the same energy. You feel the drive and the desire to create just a good heavy metal record, and that's what they did. So I think it still holds up after 10 years, for sure.
It's hard to believe that album is over 10 years old, and that I recorded those demos, the Run for Your Life demos, and then, became a part of the band and re-recorded that album after we had some shows under our belt. Time flies, and, obviously I'm not in the band anymore, but it's cool to think about the old days. I always do. Even though I lead a different life now and I'm not a part of the music industry, I'm proud of what I've done in my career. And this album is the starting point of my touring career. It's the starting point of me going to the next level with a band and being signed to I would say a major label. And it was a really big turning point in my career, and I was able to take my drumming to the next level. I had to really start conditioning myself for this band, and this album is quintessential Night Demon.
It's hard to imagine it's been 10 years since Curse of the Damned was released. I mean, it does feel like yesterday. At the same time, there's been so much happening between now and then. It's like, it seems like a lifetime ago at the same time. But, really reflecting back on it, I think, when you have a decade where you have a pandemic in it, or like a 2-year break from the road, for a band like Night Demon, time starts to become very distorted. Like, I feel like the time between when we're talking now in 2025 and 2020, our lives completely changed. We've talked about it, I think, a bit before on the podcast, but the pandemic was actually, as shitty as it was, it was kind of a graceful time for us. And, I look back on it fondly, just the long summer vacation, and how creative we were during that period. But we were, if you think about it, Curse of the Damned was 5 years old when that happened, and now it's 10. So it's like, what happened to the time? We've always we've always been living in this zone that Night Demon is a newer band. And now when your full-length debut is 10 years old and your debut EP is 12 years old, you're kind of actually it's 14 years old if you count the time that we recorded it, not when we released it. You kind of have some time to reflect and take a bit of a step back, and start to appreciate these things.
I think it's very much the album that the metal scene needed at the time.
I think it was the perfect album for the time, and I think that there was a rise in the new wave of traditional heavy metal. Night Demon happened to just be right on the front of the wave. The wave was starting to crest in a sense, and they were right on top of it.
It's a snapshot into where Night Demon was at the time as well.
One thing with our entire catalog, there's not a single song that we haven't played live, and Curse gets represented a lot, even in shorter sets that we have when we're on support tours. Sometimes I find that there's more Curse songs in there than anything else. But I feel that it has aged well, and that's why we're revisiting this with an updated mix and with all of the raw materials, from the original record. There was also this feeling when we were writing that album that, I hate to use the term modern classics because I guess that sounds, a bit arrogant, right? But I guess you have to have some arrogance when you're talking about your work and when you're creating. And I don't think any artist from any medium goes into their work with the intention of creating something mediocre, right? Or non-memorable. And so, just kind of putting my head back to where we were at that point when we were writing, some of these songs that were coming out, we were really expanding the boundaries of what we thought we were capable of, because, you got to remember that we never really had a goal as a band to do a full-length record. We just really wanted to do the first EP. So when this became a reality, it was like, okay, well, where do we take this? Because the first EP, we thought we had covered all of our bases. But no, did we do a Save Me Now kind of AOR type song, or Heavy Metal Heat, The Howling Man, the list goes on and on. But, in that respect, I felt that it was a complete album.
Compared to the EP, Curse of the Damned is definitely a step forward. Bands should grow with each recording and album, but there's a lot more energy, I feel, in Night Demon as the band goes on. The EP, at least the album or the studio versions of them, are pretty slow compared to how they're played live, and I think they sound better a bit faster and more ramped up. But the Curse of the Damned album, I think that they worked towards that, got the speeds a little bit more up-tempo by that point. Some songs, I think live we do play a little bit faster, but for the most part, I think that the energy was more together, and it just sounded like a more mature band at that point.
With the cover artwork and the imagery and everything that we were doing there was already after the EP, there was a lot of expectations on us. So, thinking back 10 years ago, the fact that it was critically acclaimed, which, who gives a shit about that, right? You can't worry about the critics, but actually when they do love it, it does feel great, right? And the fans loved it.
Die-hard Night Demon fans, I think that album will never go out of their top album. I think Curse stands the test of time with the true fans. They really gravitate towards that album.
This record really kind of cemented Night Demon as a player in the game of whatever was going on then, the new wave of traditional heavy metal scene.
And I very much admired the band for getting out there and putting that album out and doing that, because the traditional metal scene at the time was not quite as strong, I don't think, as it is now. Now there's bands left and right playing old school style, what we call traditional heavy metal, I guess. But at the time, the scene was largely dominated by death metal and extreme metal of all different kinds. I know there were not as many bands doing this style at that time as there are today. So I think for that reason, Night Demon stood out for sure, because there just wasn't a whole lot of that. And that's what I admired and respected. I mean, you could put the music aside, just that attitude and willing to go out there and put out a record of that style at that time, I just thought was a very respectable thing, because you were really going against the grain, I think, and doing something different from what the majority was doing.
The fact that we were picked up by two big labels that released this record kind of sent a message and sent some shockwaves in the underground that, this band that everybody thought was a British band from 1982 are just some young guys from the beaches of Southern California that have, created, at least put another stamp on the scene. And this record definitely represents that.
Lost in the dark between heaven and hell. Inverted crosses on the wall. A fallen angel comes up to you. Says, follow me, your master calls. His name is Satan. He rules the underworld. Satan, he's coming for your soul. So turning back.
So yeah, as I mentioned before, starting out, it was me and Brent Woodward started the band and quickly brought in our friend Pat Bailey to play drums. Just the fact that, we were the only guys that really loved this kind of music and and knew that we could do it some justice. We actually asked Armand to join the band right when we started, and he was playing in New Liberty at the time with Dusty and doing a lot of studio work and kind of getting his new studio off the ground. And, he wasn't interested, and it's kind of, everything works out for the right reasons, right? But, he was on the ground floor with us right away. We were rehearsing next door to his studio. So he heard all the rehearsals, and, he recorded and produced the first EP along with the Run for Your Life sessions, which would turn into Curse of the Damned. But so basically, Pat had no interest in being in the band. I mean, he was just kind of jamming for fun, and I respect that. We played one show with him and then kind of called it a day until a couple years later when our good friend John Crear said, "You need to do this band. I will play drums. I'm not a metal guy, but I will play drums just so you can do this band."
Hey guys, what's going on? This is John Carrar, former drummer of Night Demon. Pat was going to go to school up in Humboldt, so he was going to be leaving anyways. And so that's kind of what I think they were thinking, like, let's just do this, record these songs, put it out there, be some mysterious kind of thing. I was just, to Brent, like, well, why don't I just play drums, man? And I was like, hey guys, you guys shouldn't be this mystery band that's put out the 7-inch that no one knows when, and these songs are too good. This is good. Let's do this band.
That's how we got kicked off, and that's when the Curse of the Damned, that's when the songs were starting to be fleshed out, And then, Dusty eventually comes in right before the recording of the Run for Your Life sessions, like literally the day before. We did have a break in there where we did have a show that we had to play, and John was no longer in the band. And Armand did play drums, which was crazy.
So I ended up playing drums for Night Demon for one show. It was the transitional period between John and Dusty. I think the guys had broke the news that they were going to, move on and have Dusty play with them and join the band or whatever. And they had they had this one show that was booked that they didn't want to cancel it. So I'm not exactly sure if they straight up asked me to play that or it was my idea, because I've done that before. So, so this thing came up and it was like, well, this is what happens all the time with me. It's like when I record these bands, I learn this, I hear the songs so many times that I know them just as well as the guys in the band. And having the musical ear that I have, it's pretty easy for me to pick up on stuff like drums and just be able to just play it. So it was like, hey, you know how to play, the songs, we really want to still do this show. So I was like, yeah, I'll play, so fuck it. So I did.
But yeah, I mean, it's kind of strange that when you think about the material of Curse of the Damned, there are songs on this record that go way back to writing sessions that happened, in late 2011, very early 2012. With myself, Brent, and Pat Bailey, and then the bulk of it was written with myself, Brent, and John Crear, and then Dusty comes in for the recording with Armand at the helm. So when you really think about it, this album has the fingerprints of all of the band members of Night Demon up until 2023. So it's pretty interesting in that respect. And, at the time, when you're at that stage in your career so early on, pretty much every song you're writing is just going to get put into a pile that's going to eventually be compiled to go on an album. And, at the time we were a regional band, and we were playing shows in our hometown and kind of getting out of the area, going to, Las Vegas or Phoenix and LA, Santa Barbara. And, you know, you're kind of like, you're woodshedding these songs as you go. And you're kind of testing them out for the audience.
Fuck yeah, that's right. Here's a new song we've been working on for the last week. This song is called Run For Your Lives.
And when you're a younger band like that, or a band, I wouldn't say younger band, when you're a band that early in your career, you're allowed to go out and do this kind of stuff, right? No, there's no expectations from anybody. You can go out and play a song nobody's heard, and it doesn't matter because they're just hearing you for the first time. But you know, I'm just really grateful for the members of this band and you know, the friendship and the bond that we had. And you know, things happen in life. We're all human, right? But this album exists. These demos exist. The fake album, Run For Your Life, exists. All this live stuff, it exists in the world. And the fact that we can bring it out, you know, and I could take this jog down memory lane, I really do have to reiterate, you know, how much respect I have for the current and former members of the band and the magic that we created. It's a snapshot in time, and no matter what has happened between now and then, or between any of us personally or whatever, you can't take away the magic that we created and the chemistry that we had together. in all incarnations. It took all of us along the journey to be able to make this record.
There's something about songs were written, in the early days of a band. It's like they always say you have your whole life to write your first album or whatever. Well, I think that they had not their whole lives, but because everybody had been in different bands and all that. But there was probably an excitement and like an energy that they captured at that time with this album, and with Dusty being new in the band and giving it a new life and a new energy. So, yeah, I think it's aged very well.
You can feel the heavy mental heat. Mental heat. Grab your shit. Now it's time to hit the road. Another.
Brent and Jarvis were good friends at this time, and John, when he was playing drums in the band and they were writing these songs, I wasn't a part of the writing process except for Screams and Mastermind. I know that at some point, I had quit New Liberty in August of 13 and became a member of Night Demon by October of 13. The demos that I heard once I was approached to record the album, the songs were all there. There was a couple things that we ended up, kind of tweaking, but the majority of those songs were already written. And, Jarvis had an idea of, where he wanted the band to be, as well as Brent. And those guys at that time, they really were focused on making Night Demon a household name in the underground metal scene. So when I came in to rehearse with them, I was excited, and I knew that I could contribute to the project and help them get to the next level.
Armand was very instrumental from the beginning, with the recording and the production of the EP and then the Run for Your Life sessions. But he was doing a lot of stuff with us. He was really helping out with ideas and guitar parts. I mean, there's some stuff that he even played guitar on the Run for Your Life sessions, and just some clean parts and stuff like this. He wasn't trying to take over or anything like that, but we would just hit a brick wall sometimes and just be like, dude, just play it. And he'd be like, okay, one take, right? I kind of wonder sometimes, like, what, I guess you always, hindsight's always 20/20, right? You always wonder, like, what would have happened if he would have joined the band? Like, when we started, like, I don't know. I mean, we would be having a totally different conversation right now. Maybe not a conversation at all. I have no idea. I mean, things work out the way that they work out. But I do think about that a lot. And I'm just glad that he was around for all that stuff, and he was helping out with all that stuff, and he was an integral part of it because, when you think about, him joining the band, we're coming up on almost 10 years since he's been in the band, right? He joined in January of 2016. And I'm glad that his DNA is a part of the band from the beginning, because he's, I don't see him as like a new member of the band whatsoever. He's been in the band longer than anyone else besides me. And, to get him to talk about the EP and to talk about Curse, it's a very natural feeling thing. With Armand, I can definitely say that, since he had such a big role in the production of these songs that, you know, I hope at the end of the day that he feels connected to them in some way, in a way that, you know, they've become, you know, his songs as well. It's kind of like when you release music or any kind of art, you do your best, you do what makes you happy, and then once it's in the world, it's totally out of your control, and it's not really yours anymore. It's there for the public. And some people will tell you through the years how that music made them feel, good or bad. Mostly they tell you good. And, you know, how that music has helped people through rough times. But another thing to realize that I was thinking about the other night is and this goes for anybody doing anything, anytime you put something out into the world, it's going to affect somebody. And most of the time, you're not going to know about it. I mean, I think about how many albums I love or films I love or pieces of art that I love that have really helped me in my life and got me through some rough times. And I've never told the creators about that. I've told some of them, but most of them I haven't. I haven't had the opportunity or I haven't, you know, been motivated to do it. I've never told them, you know, the profound effect that it had on me. So I've got to realize the same. There's probably many people out there that have not told us and will not tell us. And so for anybody that's creating anything out there and releasing it out into the world, always remember that you're doing something good. You're getting your creativity out there, and it's going to help somebody. Whether they tell you or not, you just have to know that.
Walk down that road and hold your head up high, but beware that evil awaits you no matter how hard you try. Don't hide in the shadow just to avoid the light. For the devil, he may take your life away. Here it comes down, crushing your walls. Then you will know destiny calls. 'Cause you're the mastermind. Don't waste your time. You're the mastermind. Open the doorway and step into your mind. Keep on pushing forward no matter what.
I think as far as the band taking the next step and getting signed to a label and everything, it's right there. Big Night Demon fans that love the band for what it is and whatever made them feel something at that time, Curse of the Damned is number one for them.
I'd say the songs have definitely held up over the years. It fits in to Night Demon's discography exactly where it needs to. It makes sense. You know, it was the next step forward from the EP, and it's just where Night Demon was at the time.
It holds up. It's a classic album for Night Demon. You know, got him on the map. The album artwork is A+. The songwriting is A+. Everything is there.
There was still a lot of growth to happen, but already a lot of growth had happened by that point too. The band has just continued to grow, musically and otherwise. So, yeah, I think that Curse of the Damned is a great time capsule, a great look into where everybody was at that time, and I personally have a lot of great memories with it, so I'm sure a lot of the fans do as well.
That album, people loved it. Like, you know, there was something about that album that translated to the audience and to the listener. And I think that's ultimately what Night Demon wanted. You know, they had an idea for how the album was supposed to sound, and Roger Camaro, you know, he did a great job of making Curse of the Damned sound the way it did. But I think the album stands the test of time. I think it's a classic album that people are going to listen to for a long time. I'm proud to be a part of it.
If you can call a 10-year-old album a classic, I mean, I guess it is. You know, it's just one of those that it's kind of like the introduction of the band of the world, really solidifying the band as like a major force to be reckoned with in the metal scene.
I think for fans, it's right at the top as far as importance. Me personally, I think it was the introduction to me being in the band. You know, even though the extended EP, I played a couple songs, but as far as a full album, this was the one that solidified my place in the band. So it's special to me that way.
So that's it for this week. We got lots of Curse 10th anniversary content coming up. CursedAmn.com for info on the Curse of the Damned Ultimate Edition. Also the axe-wielding Eugene action figure, which is pretty cool. NightDemon.net for Curse of the Damned anniversary tour dates. They're going to be playing the full album in full, including my hometown, which is pretty cool. I'm pretty excited for that. Curse of the Damned at 10. Until next time, this is Nesbitt signing off.
I hear a voice screaming in the night, a desperate cry from the grave. Heavy breathing, nothing is in sight. I try to make my ears ache. Madness takes over my mind. I'm going insane. In the dark corners you will find the questions remain. Save me now, 'cause I'm losing all control. Save me now, death is knocking at my door. Save me now, Lucifer has got a hold. My soul is gonna burn in flames. I see the masses burning down the woods. Only time I can borrow. Oh, high priestess, say those ancient words. Rey oscurato me tu trono. Stab that dagger through my heart, then go to hell. I am the one who wears the mark. I know you can tell. Save me now, 'cause I'm losing all control. Save me now, death is knocking at my door. Save me now, Lucifer has got a hold. My soul is gonna burn in flames. Oh no! Save me now, 'cause I'm losing all control. Save me now, death is knocking at my door. Save me now, Lucifer has got a hold. My soul is gonna burn in flames. I'm losing control, losing my soul. Oh, 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 oh.
Thanks for listening to the Night Demon Heavy Metal Podcast. Head over to nightdemon.net, click on the subscriber tab, and sign up to access exclusive weekly bonus content. If you would like to donate to support the Night Demon Heavy Metal Podcast, you can do so through PayPal at paypal.me/nightdemonmetal. Additionally, if you have not already done so, please subscribe, like, rate, and review the show on iTunes or wherever you listen to podcasts.
All hail, Night Demon Heavy Metal Podcast listeners. This is Dusty Squires chiming in to tell you about my brand new signature sticks from the London Drumstick Company. I've dreamt of having my very own drumsticks ever since I was a wee lad, and LDC made that a possibility for me. Founded in 2016 in London, England, the birthplace of heavy metal, the London Drumstick Company has trailblazed a path through the music industry and taken the drummer world by storm. When I met them for the first time, they knew their product was going to withstand the beatings of a Night Demon show. They took the time to work with me on getting everything just right. The balance and weight of my sticks are the same no matter what, and the durability is bar none the best I've ever had. I know my sticks will last through the set night after night. I'm truly honored to work with a company that caters to their players the way LDC does. Their innovation and attention to detail is what separates them from the rest of the stick makers out there. Their custom stick sleeves are unbelievable and really make the entire presentation complete. Wait until you see the design they came up with for me. It blew my mind and was a surprise to say the least. They have all kinds of amazing swag, including hoodies, t-shirts, drummer shorts, drum keys, stick bags, towels, face masks, practice pads, and much, much more. Even if you're not a drummer, you can be a part of Demon history and order my brand new signature sticks direct from their website. How cool is that? And to top it off, the London Drumstick Company are giving an exclusive offer to the Night Demon Heavy Metal Podcast listeners. Go to londondrumsticks.co.uk and receive a 15% store-wide discount using promo code DEMONSTICKS. All capital letters, no spaces, Demon Sticks. DEMONSTICKS. I can't thank everyone there enough for the opportunity to be a part of their family and for them trusting me with their amazing products. See you metal maniacs on the road very soon. And yes, the wood chips will be flying.
Greetings, boils and ghouls. This is your comrade, the Crypt Keeper here, reporting dead from the sanctuary of the strange. Tonight's macabre myth is a fright-filled feature, one overflowing with monsters, madness, and magic.
Visit our website at monstersmadnessandmagic.com to stay up to date on all the dark dealings within the sanctuary of the strange. Enjoy the show.
Hey Metalheads, I'm Mark and I host the Metal Forge. Let me tell you about the show. The Metal Forge features the best underground metal from all over the world. We spend every week with a different artist with interviews, in-depth conversations, and most of all, the music. We also feature audience interactivity where you can submit your questions to the upcoming guests. New episodes are out every Friday at noon Eastern Time at metalforgeradio.com or wherever you listen to your podcasts.
Want to know what's going on in the world of music? Then tune in to the Nothing Shocking Podcast, a non-genre based, all-ages friendly rock and roll program. Join us weekly for interviews with all your favorite rock stars from the mainstream to the underground. You can find us at nothingshocking.libsyn.com or anywhere you download podcasts.
Okay, metalheads, you've been complaining that there has not been a channel that plays all of the heavy metal videos from past, present, and future for years and years at this point. Well, that time is over. Heavy Metal Television is back. HeavyMetalTelevision.net is the website. Go there. You can see videos playing 24/7, 365, all the time. All the best from the old school, the new school, and everything in between. Check it out, HeavyMetalTelevision.net. It is where the metal is.